Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's SEA Development Seminar. We're really excited for today's session. My name is Leslie Buxton. I am a member of the SEA Development Committee for USU, and I'm excited to welcome you today. We have with us our wonderful Brooke Lister. She is our registered dietitian here and serves all of us as employees and does a wonderful job. A little bit about Brooke before I let her start this morning. She is a USU grad. She did her bachelor's in nutrition, dietetics, and food sciences, graduated in 2018 there. And she did her practicum at the USU Salt Lake Center for Dietetics. So if any of you are in the Salt Lake area, maybe you've seen Brooke in that capacity. She also is just finished, right? Your Master's of Public Health, Brooke. So congratulations to you on that. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you just so that you know we have it scheduled for her to speak with you all until about 12:30, but she has some flexibility there. And then we'll leave about 15 minutes on the back end for question and answer. So we'll go until about 12:45. Go ahead, Brooke, it's all you.
Perfect. So I am Brooke, and I am so excited to be able to present to you guys today on just healthy eating habits to kind of support your busy working lifestyles. Sometimes when we are busy professionals, health and nutrition can kind of take a little bit of a back burner. So, hopefully, we can give you some tips today to kind of just get you back into healthy eating and just promoting that healthy lifestyle that you are wanting. So, I will go ahead and share my screen with you. Just a couple of things to start off, though. I really want this to be an engaging presentation. I don't just want to talk at you the whole time. I want to be able to discuss things with you. There will be little like activity breaks. I will also kind of break throughout for questions. So if you want to put those in the chat, you can do that. You can also feel free to unmute. But I would love if you could turn your cameras on and engage and participate in the activities, because I think that there is a lot that we can learn from each other also. A lot of you guys have a lot of really good input, and I would love to hear that, as well as the other people that are on this call. So I encourage you to participate and be interactive in this presentation. So eat well to be well. This is all about optimal eating habits. So we'll cover a lot within the hour. And if you do have any questions, like I said, I want to make sure I answer those. So feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourselves. So just contents, list of topics that we'll be covering. So we're going to be talking about the timing of meals and snacks, the importance of breakfast. We'll cover a little bit about the plate method, which is also known as my plate, for kind of portion sizing and what the components are that kind of make a healthy, balanced diet. We'll also be talking about snacking, emotional eating, and then we'll just kind of wrap up with some overview, like key points, and just any questions that you guys may have. So that's an outline of where we are going. But I just have a couple questions I want to pose to you all first. And the first one is, how often do you think that we should be eating to properly fuel our bodies? So go ahead and either unmute or put your thoughts in the chat. Okay, we're getting 3 meals a day, 5 to 6 times a day, every 3 to 4 hours, every few hours. 3 to 4 is pretty common. It's okay to skip meals every 2.5 hours when your body says no, 3 times a day. 3 meals a day and a couple of snacks. Eat when your body tells you. So there's a lot of like 2 to 3 times a day, listening to your body. That's a good one. You can skip meals. That's also pretty common. So those are all great responses, and we'll kind of clear that up. The next question is you guys thought, is it okay to skip meals? And a couple of you said yes. So you kind of already saw my second question. So we'll just go into what optimal eating times are for our bodies, and everyone is very individual. So I don't want to say this is something that everyone needs to do, but this has just been proven by research to be the optimal time for fueling our bodies. With that, we do want to make sure, like, if we're not hungry, like, you don't have to be eating if it's past like that 4 to 5 hour range, because ideally we do want to be eating either a balanced meal or a balanced snack every 4 to 5 hours. And that's typically when our body is empty. We've kind of digested everything and processed everything that we ate, that meal or snack prior. And that's when our body is looking for its next fueling opportunity and for that next eating opportunity. So we want to aim to eat about 4 to 6 times a day, and that will fit us within that 4 to 5 hour time frame. And it does not have to be a meal. It can be, like I said, a balanced snack between meals to kind of help you to eat this or eat with this timeline. And then if you aren't able to eat a meal, it is better to have a snack rather than nothing to prevent overeating later. And we'll kind of go into the reasoning why eating consistently and not skipping meals is important. But over here on the side, I just put kind of an example timeline of typical times that people eat. Like I said, this obviously varies for everyone, but just so you can kind of see that breakdown of every 4 to 5 hours. These are around about times that we could be eating. And you could also maybe have another snack in there between breakfast and lunch if those are a little bit more spread out for you. Or sometimes we do need a snack after dinner, maybe before bedtime, and we're still feeling hungry. So it really is individualized for everyone, but we do want to try and make sure that we are eating approximately 4 to 5 hours apart and not skipping meals for the most part. This is a question I get a lot. Should I stop eating at a certain time? Like, do I stop eating at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m.? Or maybe it's like, I can't have anything after dinner. That's bad. The short answer for that is no. You do not have to stop eating at a certain time. There are definitely times where our hunger kind of ebbs and flows. So you might notice that one day you're more hungrier than you were the previous day. And that's okay. Like I said, that is very normal for us to kind of ebb and flow with our hunger. We can be more hungry on some days, so you might notice that you do need to snack later. So it's just important that we're eating a small, balanced snack to promote good sleep and healthy digestion. We don't want to have anything too like fatty or greasy or like heavy around bedtime, just because that can lead to a little bit of indigestion. It could leave you maybe feeling a little bit groggy in the morning if you haven't had that balanced snack that we're looking for. But we also want to make sure with eating at night that it is actually physical hunger rather than like an emotional need, or that we're using food to kind of cope with any either negative or positive emotions that we're experiencing. So we want to make sure that our body is actually hungry rather than maybe trying to use food to cope with an emotion like maybe sadness, or you're anxious about a project at work, or you just put your kids to bed and you're like, finally I can relax, so I'm going to treat myself to ice cream or chips or whatever it may be. There's a lot of emotions that we're juggling, and I would say to an extent most people have some degree of an emotional eating with food. So we'll go into that a little bit later too. But try to include protein with a bedtime snack also. That just helps to keep you kind of fuller a little bit longer. And if our bedtime snacks are very carb heavy, again, it can leave us feeling groggier in the mornings, but you also may feel pretty hungry in the morning when you wake up just because your body didn't get that protein that it was looking for at bedtime. So, in short, there's no time to cut off eating, but we really do want to make sure we're eating out of a physical need rather than an emotional one when it comes to kind of like nighttime eating. So,
Brooke, we
benefit,
have a question,
yeah.
sorry, real quickly from Brenda. She says, what do you think about eating within an hour of waking in the morning? I've heard that that is better.
Yeah, we'll actually talk about that in a couple slides, but it is preferred to eat within an hour of waking up. And then I also saw there is a comment or a question, is intermittent fasting bad? It's not necessarily bad. There are like I said, everything is very individualized. So some people do feel better following like an intermittent fasting diet. And there are like a million different ways that people can like intermittent fast. You can kind of go for like a 16-hour period where you're fasting and then eating for 8 hours. And that can be really any hours that you want. But you can also shorten that period that you're fasting. That's one way to do it, is just that time control. Or there's like alternate day fasting. So you eat normally for one day, you fast the next day. There's like fasting for 5 days or 2 days a week and eating regular for five. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I would say for intermittent fasting, it's not bad. But we can see a lot of maybe like overeating or binge eating if we are being really restrictive with the times that we're eating. But I know a lot of people that do intermittent fasting, they just feel better in the mornings, feel like their body has been able to kind of digest everything that they've eaten the day before. So that could be a good benefit. So, kind of with that question, it's just individualized if that makes you feel better, but typically to make sure we're giving our body the fuel that it needs, we want to be eating every 4 to 5 hours. So that really is just an individualized opinion on what works best for you. But the benefits of eating consistently, there's five here. It helps with better blood sugar control. So especially with diabetes, that is not a medical condition where we typically recommend like intermittent fasting or going for long periods of time without eating, because we are wanting to control that blood sugar. We don't want to be fasting or skipping any meals. It also regulates hunger hormones. So if we go long periods of time without fueling our bodies, we can have increased hunger hormones in the body, which again can lead to overeating or binge eating. It helps to optimize our digestion if we're eating frequently or consistently, helps to prevent overeating. That goes closely with the hunger hormones. And then it also improves our energy levels. I don't know if any of you do consistently skip meals. You do not have to tell everyone, but if you notice that maybe you are feeling fatigued or lethargic, or you just don't have enough energy to maybe get through your day, that could be maybe something to look at, of throwing a snack in there. Or if you do like skip breakfast, again, eating a small snack instead of completely skipping a meal might be really beneficial at regulating those energy levels and just kind of keeping you more consistent throughout the day when it comes to energy. So we're not having those kind of dips. So, the importance of breakfast. I know we hear this a lot. We should be eating breakfast. It is the most important meal of the day. However, I do this sometimes. I don't always maybe have the healthiest breakfast just because I know we're trying to get out the door to work. We might be sending kids off to school. There's a lot of things that we're trying to balance throughout the day. So breakfast can kind of be an afterthought, but it is important that we are eating breakfast. Again, it does help with those energy levels. It encourages really just overall healthy eating throughout the day. It helps with our metabolism, which is just the way that our body kind of breaks down foods and how efficiently it is able to kind of break down and get those nutrients that we do need from the food that we're eating. So it does help with metabolism. It helps to improve concentration. And then it alerts the body that there are like plenty of calories to be had throughout the day. Kind of tells your body that, hey, I'm not restricting. If we do restrict food too much, there is science to support that our body actually goes into like starvation mode, even though we know we're not starving, maybe we're just skipping a meal, but it can conserve energy because it is kind of preparing for that period where you're not going to be eating. So it is important to alert your body that, hey, I am not going to be skipping meals today. You're going to have plenty of fuel. And that really just does help our bodies kind of internally regulate a lot of our processes in our eating. So breakfast is very, very important. And the biggest benefit of breakfast is it does regulate appetite. So research supports that those who eat breakfast are actually less likely to be overweight. And this is because eating breakfast, again, plays a huge role in those hunger hormones, especially our hunger and fullness hormones. And it also regulates the number of calories that we're burning throughout the day. So alerting our body that there's enough calories to be had allows us to have a better metabolism and burn calories more efficiently throughout the day. Whereas if we're skipping breakfast, again, we kind of go into like conservation mode. We're conserving all of the calories for like perceived starvation. So breakfast is really important in a lot of different ways and reasons. So with breakfast, just some things to keep in mind. We do want to have a higher protein breakfast. Protein does support, again, that blood sugar balance. It also helps with satiety, which is just your fullness. And that makes like snacking less likely, especially compulsive snacking, where we're feeling like we have to frequently go back and snack every maybe hour or two. Energy will also be more sustained having a higher protein breakfast. Typically, I know when people think of breakfast foods, it's a lot of like carb-rich foods, which is not bad, but a lot of like pancakes or waffles or muffins, maybe oatmeal, and a lot of the protein options we do maybe have to cook, or they take more time to prepare. So carbs are really great and easy to add to your morning breakfast routine, but we also want to make sure we're having protein so we are staying fuller for a longer period. So trying to get about 15 to 30 grams of protein at every meal, but especially at breakfast. That's just a number that we should be aiming for to make sure we are getting enough protein to kind of start our day off on the right foot. And then we did have a question about this. We do want to eat breakfast typically within an hour to an hour and a half of waking up. So that is a general timeline or recommendation. If that is not possible for you, though, it is better to maybe eat a little bit later. So if you have to eat 2 hours after waking up, or maybe even longer after that, it is better to like have a snack than completely skip breakfast. So if you can't have the traditional breakfast and sit down maybe within that hour, hour and a half of waking up, it is a good idea to even have a snack at that point, just so you are still getting those benefits of eating breakfast and kind of starting your meal off or your day off by eating. What are good sources of protein for breakfast? We'll talk about that on the next slide. And then what does 15 to 30 grams of protein look like for breakfast? And that will also be on the next slide. So we'll just go ahead and move to the next one. Oh, I guess I have a question before. So what are just some of your favorite breakfast ideas? You can put those in the chat or unmute yourselves. German pancakes, eggs, yogurt, fried egg, hard-boiled egg, veggie fruit smoothie, breakfast burrito, eggs, bacon, and cheese, overnight oats, egg sandwich, oatmeal, hummus. That's a good one that we don't typically think about for breakfast. Breakfast tacos, lots of eggs, protein shaker, protein bar, smoothies, yogurt, cereal, lots of eggs, yeah, protein shake, biscuits and gravy is a good one. Avocado toast is also really good. Yeah, you guys have a lot of good breakfast ideas, and it can be those quick options. It doesn't have to be something that you're like, you don't have to have like bacon and eggs and sausage and hash browns and fruit. Like, it does not have to be complicated. It can be pretty simple, even if it's just like cereal or oatmeal, avocado toast, even like peanut butter toast with like bananas on top is a great kind of balance. So here are just a quick couple of healthy breakfast options that I typically make and that other people have told me that are pretty quick and easy for them too. So overnight oats is a great one because you can kind of prep those the night before for an easy grab and go breakfast. If you don't like cold oatmeal, you can also heat these up. Just like pop them in the microwave for a second. Smoothies are also a great way to add in a ton of fruits and vegetables into one meal. And smoothies also do typically keep pretty well. So if you do want to make like a bigger batch and then just divide the batch that you made into like individual like serving cups, just make sure they're covered before you put them into the freezer. You can freeze them, and then the night before you have that smoothie, just make sure to pull it out of the freezer and put it in the fridge. And then by morning, it should be thawed and ready to go, and you can just give it a quick stir. So if you don't want to like turn the blender on and wake up everyone in your house in the morning, or you don't want to worry about putting that together, you can make smoothies ahead and like pre-freeze those. Yogurt parfaits are also really, really quick, and they also give us that good balance that we're looking for. So typically like a Greek yogurt is recommended just because it is a little bit higher in protein content. They kind of vary depending on the brand, but I've seen anywhere from like 9 to 15 grams of protein on a Greek yogurt. So if you did get one that was a little bit higher, that would kind of get you to meet those like 15 to 30 grams of protein kind of recommendations that I told you about in the previous slide. And that's pretty quick. You can throw that together in like less than 5 minutes in the morning. And then freezer breakfast burritos or sandwiches are again a great option to make ahead and just reheat in the morning for a quick grab and go option. If you're wanting something maybe a little bit more filling, so you could definitely do like eggs with those. Typically an egg is about 6 grams of protein. So if you wanted to do 2 eggs and then maybe like a piece of like Canadian bacon, or you could do like sausage or even turkey sausage or bacon or turkey bacon. There's a lot of different like proteins that we can add to those, but just making sure you're getting, you can do multiple protein options to make sure you're hitting that 15 to 30 grams. If you're doing like cereal, usually a glass of milk is about 8 grams of protein. So you likely will need at least 2 protein options unless you're having like a protein shake or a protein bar. Those typically have anywhere between like 15 to like 45 grams of protein in there, just again, depending on the brand. So it may take you like 1 or 2 protein choices to hit that 15 to 30. Or if you're having those higher options, like a higher protein Greek yogurt or a protein shake, you might only need one option. But those are just a couple quick, healthy breakfast options that are easy to incorporate and don't require a ton of like prep ahead time. So we have a question in the chat. When I wake up, I always want something sweet for breakfast. Is that a normal feeling for most people, or does that have anything to do with our bodies, or is it just unique to each person? That's a great question. It is kind of unique, and I hear a lot of different things from a lot of different clients. Some people do crave more sweet things in the morning. I've heard other people say I cannot eat anything sweet for breakfast in the morning or it makes me really sick. So it's honestly just unique to the person. But with kind of that question of like, is it a normal feeling? Typically, if we're craving something, our body is kind of trying to tell us in a way like, I need a certain nutrient that you would maybe be getting from like a more like sweet like breakfast option. So maybe like a fruit or maybe some like oatmeal or even like a pancake or a waffle is another sweet breakfast option. But typically those cravings from our body are telling us we need something in that food. And our bodies are really good at knowing what we need. And a lot of the time we just kind of shut those like internal cues off. So it is just important to like pay attention to how you're feeling and definitely honoring those cravings because it's most likely your body trying to tell you that you do need something in that food that you're craving for health. So that's a great question, but it is pretty unique for breakfast. Okay, this is kind of a loaded question, but I just want to get your thoughts on what you think balanced eating is. So put that in the chat or unmute yourselves. Eating a variety of food groups, eating all the food groups, combo of protein, fat, and carbs, not just eating one at once, mostly veggies and fruit, having a different food group in each meal, protein, vegetable, and carbs in the most important meals, carbs and protein. So a lot of you are saying like a good mix of all of like the macronutrients. So that would be carbs, protein, and fat. High protein, low carb, and low fat. That's an interesting one. We'll kind of get to that in a minute. Everything is good for you in moderation. I love that one. Including different kinds of nutrients in the same meal or snack. All food groups are appropriate. Balance can shift based on things like activity levels, but having a diversity of nutrients. Yeah, so you guys kind of hit the nail on the head. I also like the comment about not cutting out or limiting food groups that you hear are bad, everything in moderation. So that is great. So balanced eating, and the definition of that is including fiber-rich carbohydrates, protein, and some healthy fats with every meal and snack. And this is just a good way to make sure we are not being too restrictive with our diets, that we're getting all of the what are called like micronutrients that we need. So that would be any of like our vitamins and minerals, essentially everything besides carb, protein, and fat that we really need to maintain health. So including all of these different food groups is the best way to kind of get that balanced, healthy eating that we're looking for. So I just want to put this kind of thought up there that no restrictive diet is necessary to achieve health. We do, again, want to make sure that we're including all food groups in the diet because they all give us something different. So that's why we want to make sure we're not cutting out carbs or fat or protein, and we're getting kind of a good mix of all of those. So this is the plate method, and this is what a lot of people in like the nutrition industry, especially dietitians, are moving towards. rather than like calorie counting or weighing and measuring foods. That is really tedious for a lot of people. A lot of people don't love to constantly track everything that they're eating down to the specific like gram of protein or the number of calories. That definitely does work for some people. So if any of you do feel like that works really well for you, you can continue to do that. But we've found that kind of the plate method again incorporates a lot of those balanced eating concepts. Make sure we're getting like the nutrients from food that we're needing and we're not restricting anything too much. Because we definitely don't want to go wild with any certain food group because there can be too much of a good thing, even like fruits and vegetables. Those kind of are deemed like good foods or healthy foods a lot of the time, but you definitely can eat too many fruits and vegetables, so you can have too much of that good thing. So with the plate, we just want to have a quarter of the plate coming from those fiber rich carbs. We'll get into those in a minute. A quarter of the plate should be a lean protein, preferably. And this is a good mixture of both animal proteins and then more plant based proteins. And we'll also get into more of what is an animal protein and a plant protein. And then half the plate coming from vegetables. And then we do want a serving of dairy per meal. If you are like lactose intolerant, you can substitute that with like almond milk or soy milk, or it could even be, I know there are like plant based cheeses and yogurts out there. So if you are lactose intolerant, it doesn't have to be like cow's milk or like traditional dairy foods. It can be something that you tolerate a little bit better too. But dairy doesn't have to be like a glass of milk on the side. It could also be cheese or like yogurt incorporated into your meal. So we just want a dairy source. And then there is fruit on here also. Typically, we do recommend a fruit and a vegetable at every meal, but I think just starting out, it can be really overwhelming because I would say most of the people that I talk with don't have half of their plate coming from vegetables. So it can be, again, overwhelming or kind of hard to figure out how to incorporate half the plate coming from vegetables and an additional serving of fruit in there. So just to start off, if you feel like fruit and vegetables are hard for you to get, just aiming for half of your plate coming from a color or a produce. So a fruit or a vegetable is a great way to start to kind of help you get up to that point of having half the plate coming from just vegetables and having a fruit in there. So one or the other at first, but we want to see eventually a fruit and a vegetable with every meal just to kind of get that balance. Okay, I just had a question in the chat. It seems trendy to cut out dairy or gluten or both in the name of balancing hormones. Is there any scientific basis for this? The research is still out there, but most of the diets that do cut out gluten or dairy for like hormone balance, there's typically not a ton of science behind that. So I would say as of right now, there really isn't a whole lot to support that. Dairy and gluten, what is specifically found in like foods containing wheat, are actually really good for our bodies. So I wouldn't say you need to cut those out. What are good starches if you're allergic to wheat? We can get into that in this carbs slide, so I will make sure to mention that. And then is lactate milk okay? Yes. Yeah, if you are, so lactose is like the milk sugar that a lot of people just can't digest or break down. So lactate is a milk that has like that lactose taken out of it. So that would be a great option for dairy. Great question. So with vegetables, there's not a lot that we really need to pay attention to. We just want to make sure we are eating vegetables, again, with every meal. So one serving of vegetables is about a cup of raw veggies or a half a cup of cooked veggies. And vegetables can be frozen, canned, or fresh. I know fresh fruits and vegetables oftentimes get like a health halo put around them, that they are better or superior to like frozen or canned fruits and vegetables. And that is actually not true. So you can feel free to incorporate frozen or canned options. So don't be too worried about your vegetables coming from like all like fresh sources, because frozen and canned are great options. And then there are 3 vegetables that don't actually count in the vegetable group that we traditionally think might be vegetables, just because they're a little bit more starchy, so they're more of a carb food than a vegetable. And those are potatoes, peas, and then corn. So if you're kind of thinking about the meals that you make and meal planning, those 3 actually are going to count as more of your grain food, which, if you remember, was taking up about a quarter of the plate. So any other vegetable, though, that you can imagine would fit kind of in that like half a plate. So tomatoes, spinach, any lettuce, bell peppers, carrots, eggplant, broccoli, cauliflower, anything else you can imagine besides those 3 is considered a vegetable. Just a couple quick questions. Is juicing vegetables healthy? Do you still get the same nutritional value in the vegetables? That's a great question. So you will still get like all of your like vitamins and minerals that are found in the vegetables, but with vegetables and juicing, when we're juicing those, we're actually taking the fiber out. And fiber is really important for helping to keep us full for long periods of time. Fiber is also really great for like digestion. So if you are a person that has a lot of like digestive issues, excluding that fiber could be like hurtful in a way to your body, just because um, with juicing you're kind of taking that out. So I would say it is better to eat like a whole vegetable, just so you are getting that fiber. But I know there's a lot of like smoothies or drinks now where there's like fruits and vegetables in there. So you can feel free to incorporate those because you're still getting those vitamins, but I would say fiber is the biggest thing that you're missing out on when you are like juicing like fruits and vegetables. What about sweet potatoes? I have heard they're good. They do fit in the carb category also. So regular like white potatoes and sweet potatoes, just again, because they are a little bit more starchy, will fit in that grain or that carb category. And then where do beans fit into the plate method? We'll get to that. They're kind of a combination food, so I'll address that in just a second. So real quickly with fruit, again, it can also be fresh, frozen, or canned. With canned fruits, the main thing that we just kind of want to watch for is making sure to kind of stay away from those like canned options that are in like heavy syrup. We want to get fruits that are canned like in their own like juice. So on the front of like a can of fruit, it should say like canned in 100% fruit juice. And that's something that we're looking for rather than that heavy syrup. So it should say, again, right on the front what it is canned in. But typically that heavy syrup is just full of sugar. Usually a lot of people will drain it off, but some people do like either drink the like juice or the syrup that it's canned in. So if you are doing that, just making sure you are getting those like 100% fruit juice options, so you're not consuming all of that extra like added sugar and syrup. And then serving size for fruit depends on the form. If it's dried fruit or fruit juice, it's about a quarter of a cup per serving. Anything that's fresh, frozen, or canned is like a half a cup for one serving. And then like a medium size like apple or banana or orange, like a whole fruit, is about one serving. So none of the huge like ginormous apples at Smith's, that's probably 2 servings. Again, the really huge bananas would probably be about 2 servings. So you're aiming for a medium size for one serving of fruit. Okay. And then just real quick, other things on fruits and vegetables. I know these can get really expensive. So frozen and canned options are definitely cheaper and they do last a little bit longer than fresh produce. I don't know if any of you guys find that maybe produce goes bad before you can use it. So frozen and canned options could be great if you find that you're like throwing out a lot of fruits and vegetables. But also buying produce in season is a great way to save money. And that's typically when it's at its freshest, like most ripe point also. So we're getting like the maximum amount of like vitamins that we can get when we are eating fruits and vegetables when they're ripe. So just buying produce in season is beneficial in a lot of different ways. So I listed all of the seasons here and what kind of fruits and vegetables are in those seasons and considered like on or in season. And I can send you, or I'll send it to Leslie. I'll send these slides to her so you can have this. But we're coming into winter, so a lot of like beets, cabbage, citrus fruits are going to be really popular. Onions, squash. There's not a lot on in winter time, unfortunately. Fall and summer, there's a lot more fruits and vegetables on, but just buying in season can save money and just help with the nutrient quality of the produce that we are eating. So just something to keep in mind. And then I also put a slide on shelf life on here. If you are one of those people that throw out a lot of fresh produce, it might be helpful to pick more of these like long lasting fruits and vegetables so they can stay good, usually for like a couple weeks, sometimes a couple months, depending on if you store them right. Whereas on the short side, it might be a couple days. So I know like fresh berries typically don't last more than a week in the fridge, usually have a couple of days for like maximum freshness on those. Same thing with like lettuces, those can spoil really fast, especially if they're like pre-cut. So just something to watch for and kind of keep in mind if you feel like you are throwing out a lot of produce, sticking again to these longer lasting options when we're talking about shelf life. Okay, so we'll get into carbs and starches now. Like I said, this was a quarter of the plate when you're looking at the plate method. The main thing with carbs and starches is we want to choose whole grain or whole wheat or kind of those fiber rich carbs that help to increase the fiber intake and promote longer lasting feelings of fullness or satiety. Carbs are an important source of energy for a lot of the body processes that are happening, but also a lot of our like major organs run off of carbs as its primary fuel source, especially our brain. That is the preferred source of energy for our brains. So if you've ever done like a low carb diet, you might have maybe noticed some like brain thought fog or like decreased energy levels or maybe like feeling tired all the time. That's just because your brain isn't getting the carbs that it's looking for to keep running. So that is a downside of those low carb diets, which I know are very popular right now. But it's important that we're not eliminating any carbs completely from the diet. You can survive without carbs, but again, it's not ideal. Your body does have to start using other sources of energy in your body for fuel for your brain. And we can also become deficient in vitamin C, folate, B vitamins, including like thiamine, if we are cutting out or avoiding a lot of carbs. So we can come nutrient deficient, which is not something that we want. So it's important that we are eating carbs, but we're just picking those better carb options for us. If you are like gluten free, there are a lot of like gluten free options on the market right now. But typically, like rice is gluten free, like quinoa, barley. Um, Oatmeal can be gluten free. You just want to check and make sure on like the label on the front that it says like gluten-free because it can be like cross-contaminated with like other grains that may contain gluten. So for that question of starches, if you're allergic to wheat, those would be good ones. But I can also, if you need a specific list, feel free to like stay on the chat and I can get your email after this for whoever sent that comment. But those are some great ones. And then you can feel free to use any like gluten-free product that's on the market. So just some dangers of low carb diets. Short term, you don't have any really big complications. We can again see those nutrient deficiencies. You can see decreased energy levels. One thing with low carb diets is a lot of people do have significant short term weight loss. And that's just because they're losing a lot of water weight mainly, just because carbs, when we eat them and they're stored in our body for energy, they also store water with those. So that storage form of carbs is called glycogen. So when we lose weight, it's typically we're losing those glycogen stores and then we're losing water weight due to that, just because those carbs do store water. So you might be losing a lot of weight, but it is more water weight than like actual body fat. So just something to point out. And then long term, we can see actually like impaired physical activity with low carb diets, kidney damage, osteoporosis, other like heart issues can come up with low carb diets. And this is just something not to scare you, but I know low carb diets are really popular right now. And there's a lot of research coming out about like potential like health consequences of these extremely low carb diets. And with kind of those long-term complications, usually those arise just because we're eating typically more protein and fat to make up for the carbs that we're not eating. And those like higher amounts of protein and fat are linked to those like heart complications or kidney damage. We can also see increased LDL cholesterol, which is your bad cholesterol, or high triglyceride levels, which are like an unhealthy fat in your body that we want to keep low. So having higher amounts of protein and fat can not be great for overall health long term. So just something to kind of point out and share, just because I know low carb diets are, like I said, very popular right now. So carbs are important, again, for your brain, for a lot of our other body processes, but we just want to make sure we're including those healthier carb options for us. So I listed some here. This is not a complete list. There are a ton of carb containing foods out there, but sweet potatoes and again, regular potatoes are a great source of carbs. Any of your milk or your dairy products are also a source of carbs and protein, but they're a great carb also. Black beans and like chickpeas, any bean is actually going to be considered a carb food. It does contain like protein. So, I mean, you're getting a great combination of both of those nutrients, but when we're looking at the plate method, beans are going to be considered a carb food. And then bananas, apples are great. Brown rice is awesome. Quinoa is more of a trendier grain, but quinoa also does have a good amount of protein in there. So with all of our like whole grain or whole wheat carbs, we're going to be getting some protein from those. So that's also really great to help increase that protein content to get you to that 15 to 30 grams of protein at a meal. So we just want to make sure we are consuming those healthier carbs and not all of the white or processed or refined carbs. And then protein is critical for our growth and maintenance of our muscle and our tissues. It helps support immunity and has many other functions throughout the body. So we just want to make sure we're picking lean protein sources and incorporating more plant-based protein sources into our diet. So animal versus plant protein. So over here are your animal proteins. So any meat product, also like seafood, eggs, fish, and dairy. And then over here are your plant proteins. So your beans, your lentils, any nuts, nut butters, seeds, any tofu or soy alternatives or meat alternatives in general. And then anything that's plant-based. So I know like the Beyond Burger is really popular right now. Anything like that would be considered a plant-based protein. And those are typically made from either beans or soy. So those are great options if you do follow more of like a vegetarian or vegan diet. But really, we just want to make sure we're getting a good mixture of both plant and animal-based protein sources. Um, Benefits of plant-based protein, we don't want to say that animal proteins are bad, but plant proteins specifically, there's a wide range of positive health outcomes that come from plant-based sources of protein. So improved diabetes management. So if any of you on here do have like pre-diabetes or diabetes, plant-based proteins are great at helping to regulate those levels. Reduced risk of developing metabolic syndrome, which is a condition that is linked to cardiovascular disease, so heart disease, um, diabetes. So we want to make sure that we are not having those health conditions. And then increased protection against certain types of cancers. Plant-based proteins promote digestive health, and they also help with improved weight management also. So there's a lot of great things that we can get from incorporating more of those nuts, beans, and seeds and other sources of plant-based protein. One diet that does like encompass all of these recommendations is the Mediterranean diet. So if any of you have heard of this, this is like a food pyramid like we were taught in school, but it is a Mediterranean diet specific pyramid. So you can see at the base, we want to consume fruits and vegetables and whole grains, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices every day. We want to base a lot of our meals around all of these foods. And then as you work your way up the pyramid, we want to consume specifically fish and seafood about twice a week. Moderate intake of like chicken or other poultry like turkey, eggs, and cheese and yogurt. So a couple times a week incorporating those. And then less often like our red meats or our beef and our pork. And then sweets are also up there. And then we also want to make sure we're drinking water to stay hydrated. So this is just a good way to emphasize those fruits and vegetables, those whole grains. The Mediterranean diet has a lot of health benefits linked to it. And we're finding that people in like the Mediterranean region, in like Greece, Italy, places like that, they do have the longest lifespans throughout the world. And so they're really trying to dive in and study those like dietary patterns that they're following. And this is what they've found is most like beneficial for health and just living long, healthy lifestyles overall. So if there was one diet that I would recommend, it is probably the Mediterranean diet because nothing is restricted and you are focusing on more of those whole foods. So real quick, we're getting close to time here, but just think of a meal that you typically make, or maybe the plate method has given you some ideas. Be prepared to share those. So just put those in the chat and just maybe think of a meal that you make now or that you could make that would fit that like plate balance. So go ahead and put that in the chat and I'll just read those at the end as they come in, just to kind of keep moving through the presentation. So meal planning tips. Meal planning is hard as a busy working professional, so these are just a few tips to get started. So just start small. You don't have to do the crazy meal prep where you prep breakfast, lunch, and dinners for a whole week. Even if just planning a few small snacks or a few meals can definitely be helpful. Consider each food group when planning a meal, so kind of thinking of that plate method and how you can get a grain, a protein, a vegetable, a fruit, and a dairy in every meal that you're eating. Keeping a well-stocked pantry so you're not tempted to maybe go out to eat. Always having a couple of essential items on hand that you know that you can throw together really quickly and make that balanced meal. Head to the grocery store with a list and don't go hungry, because typically we buy foods that we might not need just because we are hungry. So never grocery shop hungry. It doesn't turn out well. Dedicate just even small amounts of time to meal prep or plan. I like to say cook once and eat twice, or just make a bigger batch is what that's saying, so you can have leftovers the next day for lunch. Or it's really nice to also like plan for leftovers and maybe freeze those so you're getting another meal out of it that maybe you can just reheat one night when maybe you're busy and don't want to cook dinner. And then you can also like repurpose your leftovers. So if you cook a lot of like chicken or meat, you can reuse that in another dish, so that kind of cuts down on your cooking time the next time that maybe you are cooking that protein. And most foods freeze really well, so if you do make a lot of leftovers and maybe it's too much, feel free to throw those in the freezer and just reheat those either for a lunch or for a dinner. And that kind of will cut down on cooking time and prep time also. So just a couple of meal planning tips. And then I'll just go ahead and skip this slide, but power snacks, we kind of talked about that we want a balanced snack. So protein and carbs are what we're aiming for with all of our snacks. We want to make sure we're having a protein and a carb. Again, that carb is our like immediate source of energy, and that protein is our long-lasting source of energy for our body. So when we're having a snack, we want to make sure we're getting both types of energy, so we're not like filling up on protein and maybe not getting that immediate satisfaction, a fullness. Whereas carbs, if we eat a ton of carbs for a snack, we're going to be hungry pretty shortly after because we didn't get that protein source to kind of hold us over longer. So with carbs and protein, we just want to pick one from each list and combine those to make a power snack. So I've listed a bunch here. So just some really quick ideas would be like an apple with peanut butter. You could do vegetables with hummus. You could do like cottage cheese and crackers. Trail mix is a great one that's kind of already combined. You could do just like nuts and like a fruit or a vegetable. Granola bars sometimes have a decent amount of protein in there, so that might be one that's already combined. So when you are snacking throughout the day, just make sure you're kind of getting that carb and that protein paired together, and that will also help with balancing those energy levels. If you guys want to, you can put some power snack combos in the chat also, of things that maybe you could incorporate, or that are maybe inspiring you off of that last slide of snacks that you could kind of incorporate throughout your day. So you can put those in the chat also, just for others to see and maybe get some ideas from you. And then emotional eating, I'll just go ahead and share this quick video and then we'll go through. This is our last topic and then we'll kind of wrap up. So I'll just share this video really fast with you guys.
Your tips, Dr. Joey, thank you so much for that.
I noticed that my hair wasn't growing at all. I recently suffered from postpartum hair loss. I suffered from hair loss.
Your tips, Dr. Joey, thank you so much for that. relationship. And that's why we've got registered nutritionist Dr. Joey Schulman here now to talk about getting off the roller coaster of emotional eating. It is possible to get off, apparently. You and I have talked about this ad nauseum. My home office was in the kitchen. The fridge was right there. The cupboards were right there. It's just this constant back and forth for no good reason. So let's talk about why we emotional eat, and are we all doing it?
Everybody, Tracy. I have heard from viewers, from my clients, everybody. These are unprecedented times. And what do we do when we're stressed? We look for sugar, we look for fat, we look for salt. And we're not looking for it at breakfast. We're emotionally eating 3 o'clock, before dinner, after dinner. I get it. I believe that everybody's an emotional eater to a certain degree. Happy, bored, sad, lonely, we eat. The only thing is that food doesn't affect us just physically. It affects us emotionally too. So if you've had to dive into the gummy bears a couple times or the chips a couple times, honestly, guys, no big deal. Dust off your knees. Let's get back to life. But if we continually do that, it will affect mood and it makes us feel inflamed. Like, forget about weight gain for a second. It just doesn't make you feel good. And everything we can do for self-care right now is really, really important.
We got to do it all, because if you're feeling sad and you're eating junk, you just spiral down that a little bit more, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So you say there are certain signs that you should be looking out for if you are an emotional eater and maybe it's time to stop the train. What are those signs?
For sure. If these signs become a daily habit, you sort of want to pay attention to that. So for example, if you're eating when you're full, if you're continually thinking, oh, I need to lose weight, and you reset the next day, or you think, I'm going to starve myself for a day or two because I've had a full food binge. If you are food binging, so if you're eating a row or two of cookies instead of 1 or 2 cookies, you're not really hungry. You're actually binging to self-soothe. If you find that you're eating when you're full, or if there's a pocket of time that's really hard for you, typically that's after dinner. People's nerves are shot, and that's where too much alcohol or too much food comes in. If that's every single day, or if you're feeling guilt, don't feel guilty after you've eaten. Enjoy your indulgences, but if there's food guilt every day, you sort of want to look at that.
Now, you actually have some strategies that we might want to try so that we can be a little bit more mindful.
100%. So what I've done with viewers and the weight loss challengers is just a couple things to snap us back into awareness. So if you put a dot on your hand, and for a day or two during your hard times, so let's say that's after dinner, before you eat anything, you look at the dot on your hand and you think, am I really hungry, or am I sad? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I bored? What's going on here? Number 2 is if you chew gum, because you want to have something to do. So if you chew gum, or if you brush your teeth, or you have a glass of water, herbal tea, that can sort of stop you in your tracks. I'm actually an emotional eater. You can ask my husband. When I'm stressed, I eat, but I keep sort of free foods around, so like baby carrots or cucumbers or little apple sauces that are unsweetened, or frozen grapes or mangoes. So I do have something to grab. And if you're actually hungry, not emotionally hungry, physically hungry, then yeah, go for some protein, have some fat. So turkey slices, almonds, walnuts, fill yourself up.
But it's got to be for hunger, and that is the difference, right, between emotional eating and actually eating to fuel your body. So we love your tips.
Okay. So I think that's a great way to summarize emotional eating. Like she said, a lot of us to a degree are emotional eaters. We eat when we're happy, we eat to celebrate occasions, but sometimes too we do eat when we're sad. So it's just important to ask yourself questions before you start eating to determine if it's like more of that physical hunger, or if it's maybe like an emotional need that we're trying to satisfy with food. So asking, am I hungry, and am I like physically hungry? Is my stomach growling? Am I kind of feeling tired? When did I last eat? Just kind of doing those check-in questions to determine how you're feeling in that moment. And then also asking yourself what emotions you're experiencing, if any. Are you bored? Are you lonely? Are you anxious? Are you sad? If you do have an emotion, it's just good to kind of dive in and kind of ask yourself, like, am I using food to kind of cope with this emotion that I'm feeling? And that kind of goes along with figuring out if you are physically hungry. And then if you feel like you are using food to kind of cope with emotions that you're experiencing, asking yourself what could be a better mechanism instead of eating. Eating is like a short-term band-aid. It doesn't make us feel great. We usually feel kind of crappy about ourselves after we do emotional eating. So asking yourself what you need instead. So do you need to go take a break, maybe go on a walk with a friend or a family member to help clear your head? Do you just need some sleep? Do you just need to like go read a book, or just kind of like your favorite release or like hobby that you can do to kind of help cope with those emotions? So these are just some key questions to ask yourself if you do really feel like you struggle with emotional eating. And then I just encourage you all, if you do feel like you struggle maybe with certain emotions more than others, just identifying maybe the top 3 reasons when you eat when you're not hungry. So if it is loneliness, if it's maybe boredom in like the middle of your workday, just identifying those reasons for yourself, and then finding ways to also fill this void and restore balance without using food. So again, taking a walk, engaging in your favorite hobby, talking it out with a friend or a family member, what's going to be a better long-term coping mechanism. And typically when we're taking care of all of our needs, so our physical needs, our mental needs, our spiritual needs, we don't usually feel the need to turn to food to cope with things. So just making sure that you are kind of addressing all of those good like areas of wellness, so we aren't using eating to kind of help us with kind of coping mechanisms. So that is the end of the presentation. If there's any other questions, I will go ahead and check the chat. But I encourage you all to look at the meals too that others maybe suggested. If you feel like you are someone that gets maybe stuck on the same couple of meals and you're looking for some new meal ideas, there's actually a ton of good ideas like in the chat. So if you are someone that needs new ideas, I would encourage you to kind of read through those. They're really fun. Just a couple of questions that I did miss. I just heard that the body can absorb about 28% of protein from meat, but about 0.8% from broccoli. So the research said it was harder to get all the protein from plants. Is that correct? Yes and no. So our body is like able to efficiently break down plant proteins, but typically we don't get as much protein from like plant sources as we do from animal sources. So like for example, a chicken breast, like an average, like if you think of a deck of cards, that's about 3 ounces. So a 3-ounce chicken breast typically has like 20 to 25 grams of protein in it, whereas a cup of beans, like black beans, has about 8. So you can see there's a huge difference between the amount of protein in a chicken breast and in a cup of black beans. So we definitely do get more protein from animal foods, but we also can get a lot of really good like vitamins and minerals and protein from plant-based foods. So that's why it's just good to kind of mix it up and make sure you're getting a good mixture of both, because it is really hard if you are especially vegan to get all of the protein that you need just from like plant-based foods. So that's kind of the reason behind that like good mixture. Let's see, any other questions? You can also unmute yourself too, if that's easier than typing it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks a lot for the presentation. It was very informative. So what's the best way to lose weight? And I guess the best and healthiest way, is it dieting and exercising? If so, at what percentage? Like 20% exercise, 80% dieting, or?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It is like diet is, I would say 70 to 80% of weight loss. Exercise is also a huge part though. So we definitely, with like dieting, there's not like one certain diet that you should follow to help with like losing weight. It really is so individual for everyone. So, I mean, one person will do really well on like, for example, like a low carb diet, whereas other people, they love their carbs, they don't want to give those up. So it really is like everything in moderation, but there are little like individualized changes that like you can make based on like you as a person. So I think that would be important if you are maybe wanting to lose weight, to meet with a professional that can kind of help you adjust to like your specific needs. Because I don't want to throw out like a blanket recommendation because it really is different for everyone. But I also think another thing that you have to look at is your stress, because stress also does not help with weight management. So if you are like a chronically stressed person, if you're not sleeping well, if you're not taking care of yourself too, that can also be like an extra layer that kind of makes weight management very complicated. So that's a great question.
Thank you.
There's a couple in the chat that I just saw come in. I don't care for chicken breast, but I like thighs and legs. The best is one better than the other. No. Chicken is fine, whatever form you prefer it in. Canned chicken is also fine. So no like preference there. It's just whatever you prefer individually. I heard some anecdotal comments that soy can have an impact on hormone balance. Is there research to support that claim? Or is it more of a rumor? It's more of a rumor at this point. They are looking into that a little bit more, but from all of the research that I have seen, that's basically a rumor at this point in time. So I wouldn't worry too much about soy. Soy can again be really good for you. So don't rule that out. And then any other questions? I have a question. Where do you find the slide recording of this? I don't know about the recording. I'll let Leslie answer that.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. So on the SEA website, we'll be posting it there. We'll also in the newsletter for next month include the post and the slides in there. We have an USU SEA YouTube page where you can see previous recordings of all of these sessions, and this will be posted there in about a week once we get the subtitles built in. So know that you'll be able to access both the slides and these recordings after today's session and share that with colleagues or those who weren't able to attend today.
And I will be sure to like share these slides with Leslie so she can send those out. So yeah, we just did a question about this. Yes, I will share like all of the slides. So
great. Well, thank you again, Brooke, for your time. Thanks all of you for attending today, and have a great rest of your, maybe for most of you, snowy day now. Goodbye. Thanks again, Brooke.
thank you. Thanks all for coming.